aspirations with really path-breaking events. She then actually joined Rabo, I think Rabo New York, and then worked with Rabo for 11 years. And then joined a fintech startup, which got acquired by a Fortune 500 company called FIS. And I think, if I'm not wrong, and Shikha can correct me, she's now with FIS. Shikha is the person who conceptualized this, led this entire event, is the one who actually selects the entrepreneur, then actually spends a humongous amount of time and effort in preparing questions and answers, and then actually working on and forcing people like me who are reluctant sidekicks to work with her. So with this brief introduction of Shikha, I'll hand it over to her to lead the session and the conversation with Swapan. I will continue to chime in whenever needed, but Shikha, it's all yours.
Thank you, Vinny. Thank you for that very generous introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to our audience joining us from all different locations. I can see the audience. In the audience, we also have many IIFM students joining us from and off campus. So very nice to have you all here. And if you haven't done already, please say hello to us in the chat and also let us know which place you're joining us from. And now welcome to AVINYA again, where we bring stories of vision and impact to life. AVINYA is a chance for all of us to reconnect, share memories and learn from each other. And as Vineet has already given a very nice introduction to AVINYA, it comes with an effort from a team which includes Sandeep, who's the president of the Alumni Association, and Vineet, as well as probably the most amount of effort comes from our speakers who have to really, put up with all the nagging and have to prepare all the questions and answers that we pose to them. So, thank you to our speaker as well today for doing that. And now, formally very welcome to our speaker, Swapan Mehra, class of 2006. He's based in Delhi, but is from Ambala today. Swapan, welcome to AVINYA. We're very excited to explore your journey, not just the milestones, but the ideas and the values that has shaped them. And I will also take the opportunity to welcome some very special guests today. Swapan's dad, Major General A.K. Mehra, who's himself a recipient of one of India's highest military honors, Veer Chakra, is also here with us today. And his mum, Mrs. Anu Mehra, is also joining today. Can we have them on the video? It's truly an honor to have you join us. Mr. and Mrs. Mehra. I'm not sure if the video is working, Swapan. You might be in a different location.
Yeah, I'm in a different location, but I don't know. If maybe when they turn it on later, they can say hi. If not now.
No problem. But thank you for joining us. And another very special guest, Dr. Madhu Verma. Many of us, there we have Mr. and Mrs. Mehra. Thank you for joining us.
Very welcome, Mr. Mehra, on behalf of all of us.
And the IIFM community is very proud of what you've given to us. So thank you for joining us today. I'd also like to welcome another very special guest, Dr. Madhu Verma, who's joining us from Paris today. Dr. Verma has been a teacher, faculty of environmental economics at IIFM for many, many years. Many of us have been her students. And now she actually works as an advisor with Swapan's venture, IORA Ecological Solutions. Thank you so much for joining us. It is again a privilege for us to have you with us, Dr. Verma.
Hello, Shikha. Hello, Swapan and Vineet. Hello, everyone. Hello from Paris. Sorry, I'm not able to put on my video. I'm nursing my daughter's little baby and I'm running around in the house, but I'm able to attend this program, and all the very best. Looking forward to this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now, before we move on, some housekeeping points. The first one, we are very keen to build a strong entrepreneur database for IIFM. One of our alums, Bhushan Patil, PFM 2018, has taken the initiative to start a database. Bhushan, if you are in the call, please could you come in the video and say hello. Our request to you is that if you are an entrepreneur, and if you have an immediate family member, spouse, parents, even children who have been through an entrepreneurial journey, please reach out to Bhushan and the Alumni Association with the details so we can continue to build on this database. We will put the emails in the chat, so please take them from there and do write to us. Also, please mark your diaries for the next Avinya episode 3. It will be on January 11th, 7 p.m. India time, and it will be a very inspiring conversation with Paul Basil, class of 94, founder of Wilgrow and Mentera. Now, coming to today's session, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We will pick them up. Around the 45-minute mark, we will look to open for live questions. We will finish with some closing statements, and we'll try and keep within the time, although we have a buffer of 5-6 minutes. May I request the audience to stay off the video and be on mute when the panel is talking, and we'll open up for questions afterwards. Coming back to Swapan, he's the founder and CEO of IORA Ecological Solutions Private Limited, a leading environmental advisory firm in India dedicated to climate action through nature-based solutions. He has worked extensively in climate finance, biodiversity conservation, and ecosystem restoration. Swapan is an alum of IIFM, but also holds a master's in public administration from the Harvard Kennedy School. He has been a World Economic Forum Global Leader, Donella Meadows Fellow, and a Lead India Fellow, and has authored over 40 publications on climate finance, biodiversity, REDD+, and ecosystem service valuation. He's a well-established thought leader in the environmental sector, serving on several national and international forums, including the Green Credit Program Technical Committee of the Government of India, the Steering Board of the International Advisory Panel on Biodiversity Credit, Expert Advisory Group for Voluntary Carbon Markets Integrity Initiative, the WEF Global Future Council on Natural Capital, and was recently elected as IUCN Vice Chair North Region. In addition to IORA Ecological Solutions, he's also the founder and trustee of IORA Trust. Today, we'll learn about his journey, the work IORA is doing, and his perspective on the future of ecological enterprises. Swapan, our first question to you, can you share a bit about your journey, your personal journey before founding IORA, until the point you actually set up IORA?
Absolutely. Firstly, Shikha, thank you very much, and thanks, Vineet. Thank you for having me here to speak in Avinya. It's always a real honor to be speaking to fellow IFMites. As many of us often discuss, being an IFMite is one of the most important part of my identity. I think IFM changed my life fundamentally. Everything else that I did built on it was incremental, but I owe a lot of where I am to IFM in terms of thought, in terms of philosophy, in terms of career. So thank you very much. So yeah, I'm delighted to share my journey with everybody, and also see what questions it invokes, and welcome everybody after this to also share more suggestions with me on how what I'm trying to do and what we are trying to do can align. So Shika, I was born in Jammu Kashmir. I'm an army kid. By the time I completed schooling, I had lived in 14 cities. Interestingly, a large part of my early upbringing was in very remote parts of India, by default in proximity of nature, starting with Kashmir, then in the northeast of India, other parts of other remote towns. By the time I graduated from school, I was actually a very confused young person who didn't know what to do. I was good in computers, I was good in economics. I somehow just decided to pursue a career which was very much in line with the trends of the day, and did my software engineering. Started working in a GIS firm, programming systems. One of the first projects I was given was helping do route optimization for the first fiber optic cable of network of India, which I kind of initially liked, but later started really detesting, because a large part of my job was to justify the prioritization of this network over forest, over water bodies, which were diverted very often, to the extent that I took a very strange and bold move of quitting my job and deciding that I'm never going to sit in a never ever going to pursue a career that keeps me in office all day and doesn't allow me to interact with the outdoors. I didn't have a definition of what I wanted to do. I did have the comfort. My parents allowed me the comfort of taking a year off and just ruminating and thinking of what I can do. I spent a whole year internally struggling, and also thinking, traveling, reading about what the world is like, what can happen, what cannot happen. There were a few books which deeply influenced me in this period. One of them, very notably, was Everybody Loves a Good Drought by P. Sainath. And then I read a lot about Indian mythology and Roman mythology philosophy. And therein, I also read a lot about, I took a deep dive in the connects between our thinking and nature. By the end of this year, I was very clear that I want to do something in the development slash environment space. And I started preparing for it. I had no idea about IFM till the end of that whole year. My parents encouraged me to do something, so I decided to prepare for CAT. And then just inadvertently near the end of that application period, came across this institute called IFM, applied there, got through, and then suffered a major period of confusion and chaos because I'd also cleared some very other important MBA institutions. I want to acknowledge a big role played by Shikha, our co-host here, at that time in helping me, because Shikha, I reached out to you out of the blue, called your office one day randomly and said, I need advice. I'm very confused about what to do because I've got this admission. I really feel I should do this, but I'm not sure about career prospects. Shikha, you really helped me think through very, very clearly. Also, by the way, my parents are here. You gave me a lot of ammunition to convince my parents that, I should be allowed to go to an institute where the average salary is low, but the prospects are very, very interesting. That's how I ended up in IFM. It was a very conscious decision in the end. Started by accident, but in the end was a very well thought through decision. And like almost any of us, the moment I went there for an interview, I fell in love and said, "There is no way that I'm not joining this place." And that's how the journey started. But in the course of that journey, I realized that I had not thought of this consciously, but in the course of the journey, I realized how much my upbringing in terms of, as an army kid, being able to explore the outdoors, being living in areas which are close to nature, and also something that my parents deeply encouraged, the idea of questioning everything, had prepared me for this institution without really knowing that I would ever end up there. And I really, really found my true calling.
Thank you, Swapan. I'm
Wonderful.
very happy I made that contribution to IFM. Vineet.
Yeah, so Swapan, I'm always inspired listening to the stories of how people were thoughtful when they made the choice to join IFM. Mine was a very thoughtless one, so it's always very interesting to come across people who are so thoughtful. But you were always a thoughtful guy. I distinctly remember meeting you sometime when you were evolving towards your entrepreneurial journey. And you did come across as a very different kind of a person. There was no yes and no at any given point of time. There was always a pause, and that pause led to, and then you took your own decision. So I'm very intrigued and interested in how did the name IORA came across, and what happened once you passed out from IFM? What triggered this desire to be an entrepreneur? And how did you build it from there?
Yeah. So thanks, Vineet. So and yes, I remember you. We met once just 2 years after my graduating from IFM, when I remember very vividly in the Radisson Hotel near the Delhi airport for lunch, and that's when you were also exploring doing something in climate change, and we discussed a lot about what I was doing and what I was thinking. It was a very interesting conversation. I remember it very vividly. So, in IFM, I started out in the first year by believing that I am going to join a hardcore biodiversity conservation NGO and work with snakes. I started training with the herpetologist there. Incidentally, I got bitten twice by two snakes, and I thought this is not a good sign. I should change my focus. Was harmless. They were not venomous snakes. But this was also the time when the Kyoto Protocol was taking. I One of the things that I did in IFM was I used to spend a lot of time in that library. That library had subscriptions to some of the best journals from around the world, environmental finance, etc. And I still feel that we need to use it a lot more, both alumni and students. I started to read about this opening up of this space of carbon finance, and from that I saw this opening of this whole space of environmental finance. Of course, it's still in works, but I realized that one of the important things that's going to happen in the next few years is that there is going to be an avenue to unlock capital to invest in nature, which will allow all of us to be able to do a lot more. And then I decided that while there is obviously a strong case for organizations which work on advocacy, grassroots work, I was suited more in terms of my skill set to advocate on resources. That was a very big realization. I didn't know much about it. Climate change, carbon finance wasn't taught in IFM at that time at all. So I self-educated, went to conferences. And I also want to deeply acknowledge Dr. Madhu Verma here, because I discussed this with her a lot. So she firstly referred me to a lot of material and connects in terms of people who are focusing on environmental finance. And she allowed me to do a course of independent study in which I actually wrote a full thesis on how payment of ecosystem services linked to commodity markets, linked to public markets, and linked to finance is good for nature, so on and so forth. Suppose that I actually decided that I am going to work in this space of finance and nature. Was very lucky again that in a visit to a conference, was able to convince somebody who was just founding the world's first carbon exchange in Singapore to hire me to help develop their product line. So I started out after IFM in Asia Carbon Exchange in Singapore, developing products for at that time the world's first carbon exchange. There was a sort of a 1.5 year assignment which I completed. Then was able to move to another company called Eco Securities, which at that time was the world's biggest carbon buyer. And then briefly led a fund in AES, a power company, actually investing in carbon finance projects, but in the coal mine methane sector. So I invested in coal mine methane projects, etc. I was running a project investment fund. So by then I had experience of actually products. I had experience of being a commodity broker, and I had experience of being a trader and investor. In all, none of these roles was I allowed to invest in nature though, because back in the day, nature investments were not hot yet. It was all clean energy, solar, etc., etc. And that's when I decided after just 4 years of work, but like a very good 4 years, I got a chance to lead teams very early, which gave me good exposure. That I need to start an outfit which actually stands for advocates and bring to the fore this idea of nature investment, starting with carbon in forestry. This was about 14 years ago. So funnily, the name of IORA was actually not a very. It's a combination of an accident and a profound story. So when I was starting my company, I initially thought I'll call it ecological capital beneath. And my company secretary who was helping me said that if you have the word, I said India ecological capital. He said first if you have the word capital and then India, you need an initial paid up capital of 100 crore rupees, which I was very far from having. So they said add a noun somewhere. So they suggested Mehra ecological solution, which I absolutely hated. So then I started thinking that what is the one thing that comes to my mind that denotes nature and biodiversity. And in my IIFM guest house, in my IIFM hostel in the balcony, there was a bunch of trees where a lot of ioras used to come and sing. It's my favorite bird. So I said instead of Mehra, call it Iora. There was also a deeper logic there. I did not want to name my company after a species which is critically endangered or very famous. I wanted to say that all biodiversity is equal and needs conservation, and hence Iora fit on both accounts. I loved the Iora, it sings very well, and it also denotes this idea of all biodiversity being important. So that's how the name came about.
So, I know Shikha has a question, but just very briefly, when you quit your job and switched over into entrepreneurship, was not the most bright time to become an entrepreneur. I think you would be probably going into entrepreneurship around the time Lehman Brothers were going belly up. The world was falling apart in the financial space. What was your reaction of your parents saying, first you chose to go into a strange institute, then you got good jobs, and then you are again making a strange decision of trying to start something on your own?
No, that was it. But surprise. My parents were here, so they were more supportive of my entrepreneurial decision than of the IFM decision to begin with, I must say. By then, I think they had realized that I will figure out something because I had gone from one job to the other, had become a country head, etc., etc. And I gave them a very convincing plan that nobody's doing this. I need to do this. I owe this to India and Mother Nature. They were concerned, of course, because I was going from a highly lucrative job and I was going into, and I told them that I'm not going to be able to raise any investments immediately because leave alone the fact that nature investing was not a big deal at that time at all. Nobody knew about it. The entire economy was going bust, and the Kyoto Protocol was also dying because that's also when the US withdrew, Australia withdrew, everybody withdrew. So carbon markets on their own also just flatlined. So I couldn't have picked a better time to start my company because everything that I stood for was had basically just ground to a halt, and I had to start bottom up. But there was also interesting. One thing I must say that I am happy about is that I feel that if the Kyoto Protocol and the emphasis on carbon finance would have continued as it was when I was in my jobs, IORA would have been very different because initially, me and one of my co-founders, he's not here today. He's got some personal emergency. We both came from a carbon background, and at the beginning of IORA, we did some major carbon deals, which actually helped us also to get sufficient capital to keep IORA afloat for the first few years. But we would have continued to go in that direction, and we would not have pursued the intellectual path which has led IORA to where it is, which is in some ways a pioneer on nature, right? So in retrospect, it all looks good, but it was quite tough for the first few years for sure.
Swapan, you touched on the funding there, and I know this is a question Vineet loves to ask every time we talk about an enterprise. So, how did you initially, the initial funding, you touched on that, but the bootstrapping, who are the investors, whether there were any grants, where did the money come from? That's like a basic
Yeah.
question for any entrepreneur.
Yeah. No, we were completely bootstrapped in the beginning. We have no investors, no grants. We were completely bootstrapped. We were built off our savings. And then, like I said, in the first year, there was carbon was at a high. So we were able to do some multi-million dollar deals, which allowed us to really finance the company for the first few years. Then slowly, we started building. We were actually in a space, we were creating a demand and then supplying it. So it was always hard. But then we were able to create a base of some funders, which included to some extent some amount of multilaterals, bilaterals, which was part philanthropic, part project finance, and then some private sector who were sort of our initial partners in terms of unlocking investments in nature. Um, Even now, till date, we've never raised external investments. Now is the first time when we are working on and close to some investments, both at our sort of holdco level as well as sort of a financing facility for two of our landscapes through project level SPV. We've closed one investment with Rabobank, actually, Shikha, your partner, your old employer, for one of our landscape, and we have a couple more coming. But in the entire period interim, we were organically funded and organically growing. There were a few reasons for that. First is a number of investors who came to us were investors were either the sort of the climate tech VCs, and because we focus exclusively on long-term nature-based projects which have long-term biodiversity offsets, long-term carbon offsets, we were unable to match sort of our return profile with that which these VCs accept. Some agri-tech companies are doing it, I know now, but we were not able to. We were unwilling to commit a hasty liquidation of carbon assets on behalf of farmers, etc., which went against our principle. We didn't want to take that chance. The second reason was that a lot of the conventional sort of institutional investors who wanted to come to us wanted always to have a controlling stake in us. We've had 2-3 offers like that, and we weren't ready to do that then, because for us, IORA, at least the what now we call IORA Holdco, we've set up a few companies, is sort of the mother engine through which we generate ideas of new things that can then pass on to creating more impact. So that was something that that has happened. So yeah, we were self-funded, contract funded, organically funded, and now we are in the process of closing some investments.
Swapan, just out of curiosity, if you had to define in one or two lines your vision when you started off, just in one or two lines, so that all the audience can come and reach at the same level. And then tell us where you stand today. I mean, it's been a long journey, reasonably long journey. Though in entrepreneurship, it always feels as if it was yesterday that you started. So what was the one or two line vision, and then where you are, and then just take us through that journey of building brick by brick.
Yeah. No, so our sort of a similar vision was that nature conservation and restoration can be entrepreneurial, can be remunerative, and can be a business. That was sort of our theory of change, and the fact that we need to unlock a substantial amount of capital for nature. I would say that we have come a long way. I don't think that we've achieved our all our goals. I mean, also our goals fundamentally depend a lot on so many external factors, but we've come a long way. We've been able to showcase in several instances at very large pilot scale. I wouldn't even call it pilot, landscape level, where we've been able to unlock millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in a combination of public and private finance to invest in conservation and restoration. We've been involved globally and nationally in the development of several new pioneering instruments. We played a key role in the carbon finance space, working with the UN, the Norwegians, in shaping the global RED Plus regime, shaping the the carbon forestry methodologies in Vera and Gold Standard. We've been on those panels that wrote them. We've been involved. We supported the government of India, led the panel that developed the green credit scheme, etc. So we've come a long way in definitionally being able to at least being, one of those 50 organizations that has nudged the world towards appreciating that nature is an investable asset, nature is critical infrastructure, and nature needs to be looked at from a positive investment lens, not only as philanthropy. I think that many of us, and not us alone, but many of us who started back in the day have reached. Yes, I don't think that we have actually, how do I say, the broken the barrages which need to be broken to actually get those $600 billion that nature needs. I feel we are close in many cases. We are doing some very interesting, innovative deals, but they take a lot of time, and we are hoping that we'll have many more of those at at the scale that we wanted. Look, our goal, Vineet, is to be responsible for financing 1 million hectares of restoration in India in the next 10 years, and then using that as a base to scale to 10 million. So that requires a lot. So let's see where we go.
So just two, three very specific questions. I heard, if I'm not right, you mentioned a co-founder. A word or two about the co-founder, the number of employees, if there is a turnover metric or any metric that you have to define your journey that you can share. More to inspire people of, you started pretty much from zero. So everything is a big success. So why don't you just give us two, three lines?
So we've had two co-founders. One is called Digvijay. He was my colleague in Eco Securities, and after that, Man Financial. Was one of India's leading carbon brokers and traders at the time, and so he's one. The second is Chaya, who's also a co-founder, but she now also runs her own organization called Vetiver, which works on behavior change of communities towards climate change. So those are our two co-founders. In terms of team and strength, look, we've got about 110 people now spread across the country. Also, some presence in South America and Southeast Asia, and growing. And some of these teams are a large part of this team is based in Delhi, but we have offices around the country. I would say, in terms of metrics, the metrics that I love reporting on is that we have advised, because back in the day we were advising. Now we are completely transforming ourselves into a nature asset investor and developer. Back in the day there was no market, we were advisors to large governments. So the matrix that I love best is that based on our work, we have advised governments, bilaterals, multilaterals on plans for restoration of close to 10 million hectares around the world. If I value the assets of those, then I would say that we've at some point of time had about $1 trillion under management in terms of ecosystem services, obviously non monetized. That's sort of our best metric. So we've had a ton of data, we have a ton of information, and had a ton of influence in terms of actual restoration. Now the goal is to try and see if we can even monetize a fraction of that ratio as an investor directly into these landscapes. Yeah, that's what we're working on.
Swapan, in your work, there's technology everywhere these days, and to be more, impactful, it's coming into play. And I know IORA has pioneered some tech-enabled ecological restoration. How do you leverage technology to support climate action and biodiversity conservation?
Yeah. Thanks, Shika. So a couple of things. One is that the one important area of technology in all our work, which everybody talks about now, is measurement, reporting, and verification. So how do you use tech to actually be able to effectively measure impacts on nature and contributions to nature? Because that's what your investors want to see, that you're transparently able to monitor. So we've done a lot of work in that space. We've actually had a very rewarding 10-year partnership with Michigan State University, which is one of the oldest remote sensing nature biodiversity labs in the world, which was funded predominantly by NASA. So we've actually developed a few pioneering algorithms which leverage machine learning and are able to predict growth, health, output, yield, and carbon of trees at a per tree level across almost all parts of. We've done it for the entire Africa, like literally every tree in Africa, every tree in 4 states of India, and large parts of South America. On top of that, now we are layering an algorithm which can also identify what are the different species. That's been actually one of our major areas of work. So this is one thing that we've done. Underlying that, we have a sort of a team which focuses on fusing different sensors, including LiDAR, radar, high resolution data, and low resolution data, to be able to give a very transparent analysis of status quo of landscapes. Finally, I sit on the governing board of the International Advisory Panel on Biodiversity Credits, where one of my roles is to convene a community of practice where we can actually disseminate other technology to be able to measure biodiversity. Some of the work that me and my team are trying to do there is to actually link remote sensing with other measures of biodiversity, such as ecoacoustics, genetics, etc. So that and we see this as a very, very important area, obviously, because without transparency and monitoring there is no money, but also because as investor interest increases, they are all going to turn towards transparency in tech for them to be able to unlock the resources. We've recently built a very interesting portal with HSBC, WRI, and Michigan State called Banking on Nature. It's called bankingonnature.org, and I'd encourage people to go and see. I think it's just getting launched today or tomorrow, but most of it is online, in which we've tried to actually explain our approach and see how this can unlock nature investing.
So, I think from an intellectual perspective and from a qualitative perspective, you have hit the ball out of the park. But I am an investor, so I keep coming back to the scale in terms of number, both in terms of human number, geographical expansion, and any numbers that you can give us, which could actually educate folks on how to build a bootstrapped organization and bring it this far. I mean, there are a lot of funded organizations who don't reach 100 people. So for you to actually take a bootstrapped organization to 100 people is very impressive. I also actually, from whatever vantage point I have, can see that you started from financing, moved to advising, and then are actually now getting into large scale project management, which is an interesting transition. And of course, it satisfies your intellectual capability. You, as a leader, would actually now be bringing people and sharing ownership, which would be throwing a new challenge. So, this scale, this geographical expansion, how did you manage it? So, some numbers on the harder side, and also what was it as a leader? What are the challenges you faced? Where were you actually? Did you Did you feel very stretched? Did you feel lonely at times? Did you feel not having enough support? Did you feel high and dry at moments? What was the journey like? So,
So let me start with the challenges first. Number of challenges. First is that the space that we work in is very cyclical. It depends a lot on geopolitics. So even though our key effort is to unlock like the whole stack of nature finance, a large part of what we do is still very carbon dependent because that is the primary market right now. So it's gone through several cycles. So that has affected interest in investing in nature quite a bit. Initially, there was none. So that's one big challenge. The second is that also with changes in geopolitics, especially recently. I mean, as one of the challenges just last year, we were on our way to we had secured about $5.5 million in grant from USAID, which was to be followed by 10 million more to actually do 5 landscapes bankable, and then DFC was going to come in and invest. They visited our landscapes. We had a term sheet signed, and then everything went poof. So we lost all of it. Notionally, we lost $110 million. We lost 5.5 in cash. So we are affected a lot by geopolitics and what happened because nature investing so far, while it's moving in that direction, is not commoditized enough to operate outside political interests. That's one of the key challenges. We have other challenges as well. The second key challenge that I think every entrepreneur or many entrepreneurs from IFM face is that we are unable to find the right kind of people who are trained at an overlap of science and finance. So we have to bring people who are either scientists and get them attuned to what's in the market, or bring market people and train them on science. So it's both ways. It's a very big challenge. The second challenge is that the people that we train are in a very unique position because they understand implementation, finance, and science. So they are prime targets for recruitment by several larger players. That's been another challenge of retaining people. Then I would also say that given that we have to, at any point of time, in any place that we are working with, we have to manage expectations of the government, of a USAID, World Bank, JICA, and of a private investor. It's very hard. Very often we've had to, really struggle because they have different time interests, time horizons, but we are trying to blend all of them together. But we've done it successfully in a few cases. I think very notably what we've been able to do in Meghalaya, where we are now at agroforestry project, which is 25,000 hectares, co-funded by JICA and Rabobank, in which we've issued the first carbon, and we are now raising a second round with other investors to take to 50,000 hectares is an example where we have done this. Um, in terms of numbers and financial growth, Vineet, yes, it's an interesting. First, let me reflect on what you mentioned. So, by the way, starting in IORA, we did not go from finance to consulting by choice. Our idea was finance, finance, finance. But when we started, we realized that there was zero appetite for any discussion of finance on forestry at all. So we had to go down to the science and the intellectual side of why finance and why create a business case. And I mean, that consumed 7, 8 years of our time, but we didn't give up. I think one thing central about all the people who formed our early team and set up our team was that we were very, very focused on work at the center. That the idea now is that we are going to dedicate our life to getting resources to nature. That has helped. In terms of financial growth, look, we've grown sort of steadily for the first 10 years. Actually, interestingly, we've always been profitable, except for 1 or 2 years when we had USAID challenges, all the time USAID challenges. But our financial growth has been very steady. We grew from like zero to maybe like 3 million in 10 years. And in the last 3 years, we've gone from three to about five and a half ish. That's the range that we are at right now. Now, which is why we are looking at these investments to scale up, and let's see what happens because of interest in carbon, etc. Yeah.
Swapan, that has been, quite a story of impact, and you've, touched many people there, or, have had a lot of, through your work, a lot has. If I can ask you, there is an example you can share with us, a story, which comes to mind, where, you can talk about your impact and, say IORA's impact, if you can share that with us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I actually, let me talk about Meghalaya, which is fresh in my mind right now. We've been working there, Shikha, in the last 4 years, a lot. We started out with a strong partnership with the government. Meghalaya is a very interesting state because it sees a lot of deforestation, even though it's a high biodiversity state because of shifting cultivation. Very challenging to get financing in because the baselines are always green. There's a particular issue in carbon called baseline additionality, as many of you might know. Um, we committed to the government that we'll mobilize enough investments to restore 100,000 hectares from private capital. They were doing 10,000 with their own public money. And we said we'll use that as a starting point and get the rest. We've been quite successful. We've reached 25,000 hectares, but that's at a very meta scale. At a very farmer scale, whenever we visit there, like just about 4 weeks ago, I was there in West Jaintia Hills, which is one of the districts in Meghalaya, and we were meeting one of our of project farmers. This lady now is the head of an SHG, and she herself on her field has planted a lot of trees because of our investment, which they have taken care of very well, but is now running one of the most successful community-based nurseries, which is now at a capacity of 6 lakh trees per year. When we started, it was like a few thousand. That multiplier in terms of the potential of them to contribute to greening even beyond a program, and by the way, they are now, there is a competing program and they are giving them saplings too. It was very satisfying to see that we might have enabled in some way a sort of a roadmap for much more scaling of greening in a particular landscape which requires greening because they are struggling so much. So that's something that comes to mind. I also think one other thing impact that we are particularly proud of is that we now have sort of this network of alumni, and when we go to any nature conference, it's kind of satisfying to see that the head of carbon in gold standard, or the head of a program in GIZ, and many other people who are leading programs in many big organizations around the world used to work with IORA, and they've learned something in IORA and they appreciate it. And in some ways, while it's obviously difficult when people leave you who are good, in some ways, if I really analyze it from the impact perspective, that's also an extension of us. That's something that makes you feel proud.
Yeah, I think ecosystem building is probably one of the banes of all IIFM entrepreneurs. So what you have been doing is not only building yourself, but you're building the world around it. You're one of those guys who jumped out of the aircraft and you constructed a parachute so that you don't collapse on the way. So that actually makes you very unique. So, just an amazing journey. We are all comrades in the negative side also. I lost cash of $75 million with DFC going into a standstill and the India-US fight. By the way, funnily, we paid. Sometimes DFC actually charges, so we had paid money also. Our money is still stuck. We pull it back then from them. But that's such is life, and such is the complication of being in such businesses that we have all been. What has been your key leadership lessons? Have you tried to co-opt people and build a board? You wanted to be very entrepreneurial. It seems like you have built a very congenial or very co-entrepreneurial founders, given that they have started on their own and yet continue to be your co-founder. So how has been your own leadership journey, personal evolution, and what have you learned in that?
Firstly, we are right now creating a board for the first time. We never created a board. We were actually waiting for I think it was personally me, and I feel that this was actually probably not the best strategy for me to have implemented, but I was constantly waiting, and I was telling our senior management that we must wait for the time when we really are able to kickstart our transition into a nature investor, which is what we wanted to be. So in that whole process, I didn't want a transient board that reflects us as just a consulting firm, which in retrospect might have been a mistake because they might have helped us if we had the right board. So I never created a formal board. We are creating a board right now. We are in the process of creating a board, and we are creating a common board, largely common between our non-profit and for-profit, of some acclaimed scientists, business people, finance people, etc., from around the world. So that's, and some of them are already on board as advisors, and that has really started helping us in terms of helping me in terms of thinking about future expansion, etc., etc. My personal journey, Vineet, I think that the IORA has
But
reflected to me.
if I may, a free advice: don't make a
Yeah.
common board between the not-for-profit, for-profit. You will
Okay.
have foundational issues later. So just avoid them. But continue.
Okay. Okay, I will do that. Look, I think that some of the things that I have learned over the years is, firstly, uh, uh, is that I have realized that now that when I look in retrospect on what happened and what I did, some of my failures, some of our failures, some of our challenging times, is that I feel that, and this is my one of my biggest learnings, is that as a founder, you cannot operate out of fear. I feel that I have operated out of fear sometimes, and I feel that the conservatism that operating out of fear introduces into your action doesn't befit any entrepreneur, especially entrepreneurs like us who are actually trying to be at the vanguard of creating something new, right? So in some ways what you're doing is you're reducing your contribution just to the advancement of the whole industry, and I feel that I've done that. I also feel I've done that because of my own, whatever, my thought process, my challenges, lack of experience, etc. I don't come from a business family. I don't know, whatever the reasons are. That's been my very big learning, is that don't operate out of fear. The second big learning is in terms of sharing. I also feel that because I saw models of leadership before I founded my own company, and these models of leadership were influenced by, like, one guy who was an ex hedge fund manager who was my boss in one company, one guy who was a power trader in another company. I realized in the last few years that those models of leadership also taught me to be selective in sharing strategy, out of a concern of strategy being co-opted. And in the last several years, I've realized that that's actually a very unfounded fear, because the fact of the matter is that if you have a brilliant strategy, the more you share, the more it grows. So that's also something that I've learned. I've learned a lot about listening over directing. I think that I think that at some point that also came out of sheer exhaustion of just directing all the time. But then when it started, I realized it's a fantastic strategy to be listening and not just purely directing. One thing that I've been able to instill in everybody who's worked with us, and this is something that me and my co-founders share a lot, and that's what has kept us together for all this while. And some of our other colleagues, we have very other senior colleagues, notably there is somebody called Akriti who's been with us for 7-8 years, Bhuvan, Rabi Sahu, there are people, Kamakshi, there are people who've been with us for 5 to 10 years. One thing that we have all in common, which I think that I might have helped propose, is this idea of work at the center. You know that nothing matters if it's not contributing to the goal of what you want to do, restoration. We can change our business model, we can suffer for a little bit of time. I think that's what has kept the other weaknesses at bay a little and help them overcome over a period of time. Yeah.
Thank you. So,
Shikhar, just give me just to summarize what Swapan said. To all the people around, both aspiring entrepreneurs and those who are entrepreneurs, Swapan has said something which probably you won't find in the books, and therefore please do take note. You fight with a sword, and sometimes start feeling the same sword that you started off with. Swapan's journey clearly tells you that he started because he is very brave. But sometimes as your institution grows, the same bravery is engulfed with fear. And the fight in between your ears continues. Swapan is a great example. And Swapan, you are very, very young. You have a long distance to go now. So you are very young and you have achieved already things that people don't achieve by the time they turn 100 also. So just this candid sharing, I think to a lot of those who are listening in, all the 3 points that Swapan mentioned are very important lessons for leadership. I can tell you a lot of CEOs struggle with these very basic asks. So do try to at least understand and reach out to Swapan if you can. Shika, sorry.
No, no worries. I'm just conscious of the time because we are 8 minutes to the hour, and I know Swapan, has to be somewhere else. So I'm actually going to skip some of the questions that we had in mind at this time. I will do a very quick rapid fire of a few questions. Swapan, if you were not an entrepreneur, what would you be?
I've realized this in the last few years that I would definitely have been a physicist. I read the Tao of Physics, I visited CERN, and I have become a quantum physics nerd. So I follow it all the time, and I'm pretty sure that's what I would have been.
Okay, and how do you explain Ayura's work to children or family members? And parents are here as well. So, how do you explain Ayura's work to them?
Um, it's very difficult. I have not done a great job. If you ask my parents, they still sometimes ask me कि तुम करते क्या हो exactly ये बताओ. But I would say in a summary, I would say that Ayora's key goal is to help nature thrive and people coexist.
Very nice. One word your team would describe you, would use to describe you.
Oh, very difficult answer. Very difficult question, Shikha.
Should have had someone.
I would err on the positive and say visionary, but I'm sure many of them have different words in mind.
Okay, a book that changed your perspective.
I would say definitely everybody loves a good drought. When I was young, impressionable, it taught me a lot. Then I would say what else? Autobiography of a yogi, the Tao of Physics. There's some books that come to mind.
Thanks. Your favorite place to unwind?
Currently we have a office with a very peaceful guest house in Meghalaya, which I go to and I just take time off and sit and unwind because I keep going to forests. So that's also one place. But this specific place has become almost like a what is it? A temple of peace for me now. Yeah.
I have to say, most of the time I've tried to reach you, you've been in Meghalaya last few months. So,
True. I might just shift there.
and if you could write a letter to yourself 20 years ago, what would it say?
It would simply say, be patient, trust the journey, don't be afraid.
Okay, and last few words on any advice for IIFM students listening in.
One important point that at my vantage point where I am involved in a lot of global processes on nature conservation, having been in this space for many years, witnessed this closely, I would like to tell all of us here that given what's happening right now, there is going to be a very huge need and demand to act on conservation and restoration. But that demand and need will not be fed purely by capitalist values. It's going to require the a need of understanding culturally, socially, spiritually why we must coexist with nature. And I think India is in a very good place to teach that to the rest of the world. And in corollary, IFMites, which in my mind embody the best in terms of people acting on nature in India, are in a very important place. So I think we must galvanize, put together our intellects to be able to really not only look at this as careers, but look at this as how we can transform the world, putting together the values of what we've learned in terms of finance, accounting, all of that, but also our heritage.
So thank you for that, Swapan. Maybe one last, any achievement you're really proud of and you want to share with the community here?
Oh, difficult.
Okay,
Actually,
10 seconds.
but I must say that the one achievement is that now I'm very proud of the fact that we are actually just simply the fact that we were able to convert Ayora into a nature investor and asset developer is something I'm very proud of because at some point it seemed very hard. Yeah.
All right. I don't, I can see one question in the chat. Jigasa, if you want to come on the screen and ask your question.
Me, that's a very interesting question. Just now.
Sorry.
Yes,
Sure.
ma'am.
Yeah.
So,
Jigasa,
ma'am, my question was that what can be the unique positioning in the market in terms of unlocking the capital from nature in the coming days? You talked about investing the capital in carbon. So, I just want
Yeah.
to know what could be that unique positioning.
No, absolutely. I think it's a very, very important question. Look, this space is evolving very fast. Many of us have seen the rush for carbon and carbon consulting and carbon project development. Now the space is maturing beyond that, and very soon it's going to invite a lot of attention, interest, and we'll need a lot of intellect of people who broadly understand nature, nature's contributions, its ecosystem service, and its values. I think that IFMites are very well placed to work at the overlap of the science of nature, the interest of the community, and an understanding of what can be investable nature models, which look beyond carbon credits also. I think that while many other schools can supply carbon PD writers, carbon consultants, we actually can be nature managers, and I think that the time for that is going to come very soon, and we must position ourselves there.
Thanks, Swapan. Manmeet, can I
Thank you so
request you to come on the video now? You have a very good question there.
Yes, thank you so much, Shikha, Vineet, and Swapan sir for this session. Really interesting. My question to you is, if you faced any moments where your head and heart were at odds, or that you were confused between logic and instinct, and how did you navigate decision making in such times?
No, no, Manmeet, that's happened several times. For one, when in after the Glasgow COP, once carbon trading in nature picked up really well, we were approached by one of the largest nature commodity traders in the world with a deal. And Vineet, I'd love to discuss this with you someday, to put in 30 million in IORA, which is several X of our balance sheet, and take control of IORA with the condition that we will supply to them carbon credits purely at like a $5 rate for 10 years to come. It was very attractive. This was also the time when the USAID signs were starting off slow down, and we really thought that this could really, really help us in terms of resources. But instinctively, we all knew this would be the wrong thing to do. It could give us a lot of money, but it will be the wrong. It will not be the thing that we stood for all these years, and we took a decision in favor of instinct. It still sometimes feels silly, but so there are several instances like this, but this is the latest one that comes to my mind.
You have the right to be silly, Swapan. So enjoy being silly. We can share silliness together some
Sure.
other time.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. We are coming up to the hour. I can see there's another question in the chat, but I will let Rahul ask that separately to you over email because we've run out of time here. Swapan, a closing statement from you.
I think that firstly, like I mentioned, I think that honestly the time for all of us to coalesce and deliver to the world truly the Indianness of nature conservation is here. So I would say let's all dream big, think big, and work together. Beyond our immediate career priorities, more on the value of what this world needs. I think we as a community can do it, really deliver.
That's great. We do need to dream big and think big. So, Swapan, having known you for about 20 years and now through, covering your journey through Avinya's second episode and Iora's journey as well, from a passionate student who came to IIFM, took that conscious decision to come to IIFM, to now being a global voice in climate action. Thank you for leading with purpose, and thank you for sharing your story with us. We wish you and the entire IORA team continued success as you expand your work to different geographies, to technologies, ecosystems. We wish you the very best. Thank you for your time, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Please do join us next time, January 11, 7 p.m. India time, to meet with Paul Basil, class of 94. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shikha and Vineet and the AVINYA team. And thank you everybody for attending on a Sunday evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, ma'am.